Hello and welcome to another Leica review. Today I would like to talk to you about how to buy lenses and specifically how to buy Leica lenses online or anywhere. There are several important points to consider, and these are fundamental things that we all should understand before we go purchasing lenses from anywhere. Whether we're buying Leica lenses or any other brand, it is important to know what to look for and how to select lenses. First of all, I will talk about the important aspects of looking at what the lens should be and what it should be in terms of condition. And I'm going to also mention the pitfalls that you may have if you are going to be purchasing lenses online. And these are important things to consider, and especially important when you are an amateur or beginning person who wants to acquire lenses for a reasonable price rather than investing in thousands and thousands of dollars buying it straight off a camera store or an authorized Leica dealer. So let's talk about the important things. First of all, you should only buy the lens that you require. What I mean is, don't go out buying 5 lenses or 6 lenses or trying to build a set. Because what happens is you end up deciding to buy lenses that are less than their best value. And when that happens is that you regret and you try to sell lenses in the future to replace them or change them. And what happens is you lose money and time. Well, you should only buy lenses that you know you are going to use. In my first years of photography, I exclusively used certain lens for that focal length for a considerable amount of time. And I'm talking about 2.5 years. I did not shoot with any other lens except a 24mm. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to be very familiar with the lens and how it captured images. I also wanted to know that a wide-angle lens would operate in different environments, different settings. So what that helped me to gain was this insight that before I even looked through the viewfinder, I would know how much of a space that it would capture, how much of it would be in the frame, and how much it would be out of the frame. And this is something that is invaluable because that way you're able to frame your shot much better and much faster and know how to place the objects in your composition. So if I'm looking at a scene, I would know that I could place a certain person or the subject on the rule of thirds and make sure that image is frame right by my distance between the subject and myself. That means I might need to take a few steps forward or backwards, knowing that I'm using that focal length. So buying the right focal length is the first step. And number 2 is buying the focal length that is useful. For example, you may find a 135mm lens to be fairly reasonably priced, but you may also find that you are not able to use that lens very effectively because it's such a long focal length. Also, it may be very good for portraiture, but you may not find it so efficient when you want to do landscape because, well, it has a very narrow angle of view. And that in itself is a very beautiful thing given the right applications. But at certain applications, it may not be the best idea or the most suitable use. For my students and for people who attend my workshops, I always say go with a relatively mild and wide-angle lens like a 35 or a 28mm and work your way to other focal lengths. For example, you may want to try out the 21mm and 24mm and then perhaps start working your way up to 75 or a 90mm, even a 135mm. Remember, when you are going longer in focal length, it is a little harder to get focus and it's a little harder to use it efficiently because of the angle of view, and any movement that you may have will affect the image quality. So it is for that very important reason I always suggest using a wider angle lenses at first because it is more suitable for beginners, especially if they are not very good at using zone focusing systems. Now, having said that, You can, of course, buy a lens that's a 50mm, which is a standard, and 50mm lenses are fairly reasonably priced. So it's an all-purpose, all-round lens that you could do multiple things. You could shoot portraits, you could do a landscape, you could even do panorama shots using a 50mm. So whether you choose a wide-angle lens or a 50mm or anything that you may select will all depend on your needs and your style of photography. So buy the lens that you need. Number two, buy a lens that is in good condition. I know Leica lenses are incredible, and there has been a tremendous desire to purchase Leica lenses, even though they may not be the most suitable lens for you. For example, people buy a swimmer lens at an f2.4 or f2.5, hoping to capture great images with great bokeh. What I do say to them is, well, it's a lens that's cheap, it's Leica, but you could have spent your money buying a Summicron that would have given you far more flexibility in your photography and will have a great resale value. See, a lot of people forget that when you purchase a lens, you have to know that that lens is that price for a reason. And the most often the mistake that people do is to purchase a lens that is cheap and spend all their money on their cameras. It should be the other way around. You should be spending your money on lenses, not the camera, because the lens will stay for many, many years. In fact, the Noctilux lenses that were first produced sell today at $20,000. They're a collector item. Most of the lenses that were produced in the 70s and 80s, the Noctiluxes, still hold much of their value. In fact, they sell much higher than what they were bought at the first time. So if you are going to buy a lens that will retain its value. Now, Leica lenses in general retain their value relatively well. But if you are going to buy a very, very old lens, like a Hector lens, it might have a value if you are going to sell it for a collector purposes. But what you will want to do is buy a lens that you have a much more accessible market, a market where you can sell that lens relatively easy. For example, a 50mm Summicron could be sold very easily, or a 35mm Summicron can be had relatively easily. So that means the market is there for you to purchase lenses at a reasonable price. Now, one thing good about Leica lenses is that they've been producing the same type of design for many, many decades. So you could buy a lens, say maybe from 1980s and 90s, for 1/3 or half the price of a new lens. And the lens design will be the same. Of course, the optical coatings would have changed, giving you a different look. But I personally like the look that was in the 70s and 80s because it had more character. And the reason they had more characters because the lenses were hand ground. But that meant that each person who worked on the lens exclusively made the lens with their hands, ground them and assemble them. And what resulted was a particular look only achievable by that lens. In fact, the famous filmmaker Stanley Kubrick would order 10 lenses from the company, try them out, and select one and send the rest back. Well, today, most of the optics are made by computer-aided laser designs or machines that are very precise. So they have a very sharp look, but also a very clinical and digitalized look. And for that very reason, buying an older lens might give you a look that you may be going after. In fact, some people will be hard-pressed to tell the difference between an older lens and a newer lens, given that they are shot with the same kind of setting. So that is the most important factor, to know that you are going to purchase a lens at a good value. Which brings me to point number 3. You have to make sure that when you buy a lens, that everything in the optics works well. Now, generally, most people who own Leica lenses treat them well. But there might be funguses, there might be dirt, it might be misused, and this results in a lens that's less than ideal. Now, some people are very good at disassembling lenses and putting them back together in a way that allows them to clean lenses or repair them. But unless you're a professional, do not attempt to buy lenses that you think you can repair or that it will cost you a fairly small amount of money to get them fixed. In the end, you may realize those lenses are not the best lenses to purchase. You want to have lenses that were less used and fairly good condition, and especially on the exterior side. If the lens has been banged around, has the paint chipping off, then you know the lens has been very, very much abused. And that's not what you would like to have with a lens. You want to have a lens that is in good condition. I found a lot of good lenses, for example, in Japan. In Japan, people take care of their lenses and they keep them in good condition. That's why when you have lenses from Japan, it makes them very, very good in terms of condition, especially the optics. Optics is the most crucial part, because if there are cleaning marks, if there are scratches on the lens elements, you're going to have problems. And the problems are there when you want to resell them as well. So buy the lens, make the right move from the get-go. Buy a lens that will serve you for many, many years to come and that you will not have to sell. And in fact, it should hold its value that whether you buy it today or tomorrow, that when you sell it, it's going to give you a greater value than what you have bought it for. See, with 90% of my lenses that I purchased, I never lost money because I knew that lens's worth, I knew how to select it. And generally, I never bought it directly from the store because I knew that the price will be very high and it will lose its value 20 to 30% within 6 months. Having said that, there were specialty lenses like the Noctilux that I had to order and wait for 3 months to get it. And for that, it was well worth it because you knew that the lens was designed and manufactured in limited quantity, and it is for that reason it was a good investment. Now, I want to talk to you about the fourth point. This is extremely important, and people often miss this point because they are so concentrated on buying lenses and they don't see the value of it. And that is buying lenses that are, for example, least known lenses. For example, people want to buy the latest version of the lens. I say, buy the lens that will serve your purpose. So, for example, if you are going to buy a Voigtlander lens, it is still a very good value. But if you are going to use Leica lenses, make sure that when you buy it, that you are sure of it. Because if you go one route or the other, you'll find that the lenses that you have selected are there for you to use for a long period of time. If you purchase the lens and you're not happy with it, it's going to sit there and lose value. What I mean is, if you purchase, for example, a Zeiss lens, and you have all these other Leica lenses, and you never take out the Zeiss to use it, then you just wasted your money. Don't buy a lens that you will not use. Even if it is a Leica lens, it is not an investment. It is a used object. It's an object that you use, a mechanical tool for you to take photographs. Investments are different things. Investments require you to invest it and put it aside, not use it or keep it in a vacuum sealed bag or air controlled room. That is investment in terms of lenses. So don't think that you're going to buy a lens and use it and then resell it just because that's an investment. What you should be doing is buying a lens that you can use. If your budget only allows you to buy a Voigtlander lens because it's cheap, do so. But do remember that you can also buy a Leica lens for a very good price. Talking about especially, for example, Leica R lenses. Fairly cheap, fairly priced, and great lenses to be had. The problem is with the Leica M mounts, it will have a problem because of the Ranger coupling and all the other stuff, which may not be suitable for the beginners. But for the beginners, there are still plenty of lenses in the M mount that you can purchase and use. A lot of people shy away from lenses because they are old. What I do say is, if it's in good condition, if it has been kept in a box or in a temperature controlled room, or it has not been left out in damp spaces, then that lens is probably going to perform spectacularly. I have a lot of lenses that are from 1930s, 1940s, even 1960s that I use efficiently and often. In fact, some of my best lenses that I use for filming are from 1960s, even though I have expensive lenses that cost tens of thousands of dollars. I may choose to use a lens that is from the 1960s because it gives me that certain character. And finally, the budgeting. People rush into things. What I mean is, they are so eager to capture that lens, to get that lens so cheap, and that they see that the bargain is going out the door because they've been watching it on eBay. The bid goes up. Well, I tell you something. Lenses are often seasonal. You may buy a lens in the winter time and buy it a lot cheaper than if you're buying in the summer months. People don't know this. People don't know the fact that you could buy lenses for a lot less if you wait and see how the market shapes itself. You can buy a much higher quality lens if you are patient. So if you have started with one lens and you're looking to improve your photography and buy your second lens, then being patient is a good value, good investment, because it's going to give you a better lens and save you a lot of money in the long run. And in fact, I have often waited up to 6 months to see certain lenses that I liked and I wanted to buy. And for that, well, it required patience. And it is for that reason I always say to my students, be patient, even in your photography, even in the way that you live your life, because with patience comes success. I hope this has been an informative review, and I hope you have taken some of these points and you will use it in your next purchase. Of course, I have provided some links down below for some of the lenses that I really like, and if you would like to purchase them, I'll put some links down below that you can check out. Of course, if you like this review and this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And I thank you for watching.